So now that I probably scared you to your wits' end with all these examples, what I want to do now is transition into sort of making it more clear about what this actually means if something like this were to happen, what your rights are, and what you need to do next. So the first thing that it actually means is, again, that the I-20 form, regardless of whether it's going to be that their status was revoked or the school shut down or there was fraud, whatever happened, that it's immediately going to impact your I-20 status. Because again, the I-20 status and the F1 are like brother and sister, basically, or cousins. Like they talk to each other. And so if the I-20, for whatever reason, can no longer be valid, it means that the F1 is automatically obsolete. And so what that means is that you have to basically act quickly to stay in status. Now, depending on what the situation is for why the certification is being lost, you may have a little bit more time. So, for example, that school in New York that shut down, they had, I think it was up to 120 days to help people figure out a new solution. And again, they work with the government on that. That's a lot different than suddenly a school pulling out and figuring out, okay, like the accreditation isn't going to work. So students have to scramble a lot more. And typically, even though it may not be in writing, but you also too want to, again, I'm giving you a lot of homework to do, but you also too want to understand what is the school's right to be able to help you along. So like that school in New York, they helped people transfer to other schools and figure it out. But for, let's say, the school in San Jose that was shutting down, students had to act really quickly. And it was on their own. And so you want to be aware of what that actual process is going to look like at your school if something were to happen. Again, you're not walking around paranoid, but these are questions that people don't ask because people think that for whatever reason, everybody's got it. Like they've got it figured out. I do not walk through life like that. I walk through like thinking that no one's got it figured out. And so I always need to understand. And that has served me well because people are just not on top of it. And so you have to advocate for yourself and sort of understand what's going on. So what you'll want to do, again, is sort of figure out, especially if you're going to, let's say, a smaller school or a school that doesn't have a lot of weight behind it. If you're going to a more branded school, they themselves don't want to be embarrassed. And so they're going to take every precaution they need to be able to move forward and make sure that they stay up to date. But you just want to be aware of that you don't want to fall out of status. Now, what do you do if this happens? So you wake up, you're out of school, and suddenly you find out, oh my goodness, you get an email, your status is being suspended. What do you actually do? So there are three options that I will give you that you can use if this happens to you. So the first option is going to be path of least resistance. You're just going to get the heck out of there and transfer to a new school. Now, again, I did talk about the fact that if you are especially an F1 student at a college or university, depending on whenever this particular event would happen, you will have to go through the application process and then transfer, let's say, in the next semester. Whereas a lot of, let's say, private high schools, boarding schools, they may take you right away, depending on what their particular bandwidth is. But that's going to be the first solution. Like, you don't want to stick around too long once something has gone down. You want to make sure that you are out of Dodge and that you're able to move forward. As I mentioned before, understanding what the school has to provide you with. So let's say the school is like the one in New York where they were closing down, but they were able to help students. Is the school able to provide you with letters of recommendation or a letter sort of stating why it happened or being able to help you with that? Or are you going to have to go it along alone? If you are having to go it alone, it's going to be harder, but you are able to plead your case of what's going on when you apply. And again, the education space is large, but it's also small. So if a school has shut down or something nefarious has gone down, they understand why students may be applying. So you want to just be able to also articulate that in your statement of purpose or in your essay. If you have not watched that video, definitely do so. But the other thing as well, too, that another option that students don't always think about is that you can apply for a different visa for a temporary set of time. So you could get on a tourist visa. If you have an opportunity, you could also get on a dependent visa. This would be for a short period of time, so maybe for 3 months of time, to be able to fill that gap to allow you to stay in the US while you figure something else out. It would not be my first recommendation. I feel that it's best that just understanding how visas work and having had so many of them myself, outside of the US that a visa is very hard to obtain. People think it's just simple, easy. It's really hard because, again, you go through this entire process, and once you get it, you want to hold on to it because you want to have the terms and conditions stay how they are. And if you go back and switch, then something changes. And I understand all of that. And so the part that I recommend is try to get to a different school that has the certification as quickly as possible. But if you cannot, or if you need to regroup yourself, switching to a different visa might allow you to do that. And depending on what the situation is of why the certification is no longer allowed at the other school, it should be a lot easier for you to do that. The third option, which I know is not going to be your favorite option, but is a likely possibility, is that you may need to leave the US and reapply. And I know that that can be really hard for people because, again, with international students, especially if you're coming to a place like the US, but even if you're places like the UK, wherever, like you have put so much work in and it's been a huge expense and you've done a lot of this work. A lot of times, like you are paying the full price yourself, or your parents are, you're paying for all of this other auxiliary stuff. And so I understand that that's going to be difficult, but it actually might be a little bit easier for you if you're able to, let's say, even if you, because there are some colleges and universities and even some boarding schools, private schools, that they only accept students in, let's say this happened to you, whatever this event is, it happened to you in February. And a lot of schools, they won't take you in the middle of everything. And so that means you have to wait till September. If you're not able to switch over to a different visa and your certification is gone, you know how I feel about students staying on their visa. We know that now, at least from until at least 2029, that the particular administration is a lot more tougher on visas. So they are going to catch you and you are going to have to leave. So I would recommend doing that on your own, and if you have to, and leaving, and then coming back, applying to a different school, and then just doing it that way. So that would be my recommendation. But again, that would be my third choice for you. I always like to say just give it a chance, and again, try and apply to another school while you're still here. It's likely going to be a lot easier for you. So what I'm actually going to do is I am going to link below the current in totality list of SEVP schools. So this includes high schools, colleges, and any other type of school, because even some kids, they come for barber school. So I'm going to link that below so that you can check that out. Again, it's really important to advocate for yourself and to ask questions. It's something that I feel very strongly about. And with international students, you're already paying even more money than foreign or current born than students that are born in the country. I cannot talk today. But it's really important to be able to do that. And don't feel any shame, as I said, of reaching out to someone in admissions, reaching out to someone in the administration at your school to figure out what the status is. And again, reading those annual reports, figuring out things. A lot of the detail is going to be in a lot of that boring stuff of where, like, you know, they're writing all this information, but then suddenly in paragraph 3, you're like, actually, this school is in a lot of debt. I need to put this application in the trash and start over somewhere else. So just being aware of that. So I'm going to link that below so you understand if your school or the schools you're interested in applying to are on that list so that you know you're right on track. And as I said, if it's more of a brand name school, like if it's a boarding school like a Andover or Deerfield, or if it's a school even like, I mean, I shouldn't use Harvard, but Yale or Princeton or UT Austin, like they are going to do everything in their power to stay in the good graces because a lot rides on it, and these schools are the top of their game. But if it's a smaller school somewhere else, maybe there could be a potential for a risk. It doesn't mean that there are, but it means that there could be. So just keeping that in mind. So have you had any other, let's say, friends or people you know that have gone to schools that have lost their SEVP status? Is it something that you're worried about? If so, let's talk about it more in the comments. I hope this video was useful for you, and I will see you over in the next one.